Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm in a crowd, I try to do my best not to bump into people. And I'm fairly certain that you try not to bump into people as well. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you can't help but bump into the people around you. Now imagine you're in a situation where a lot of people try to bump into you, or they're trying to touch you. How in the world would you know which person touched you, and why would you ask, who touched me? If everybody, in fact, is trying to touch you. I think today's Sabbath school lesson reminds us that there were things that touched Jesus in such a way that it moved him to perform miracles. For example, a very religious man by the name of Jarius is on his knees asking for help. We know that Jarius was no ordinary Jew. He was a ruler in the synagogue, and typically people came to him asking for his help. But today, he's not a ruler. He's a father. And out of desperation, he is begging Jesus not to help Jarius, but to help his daughter. And Jesus is touched by this man's love for his daughter. You know the story. On the way to Jarius' house, Jesus was touched in a very different way by a woman who was also desperate. Only this time, her desperation wasn't for a loved one. It was for herself. For 12 years, she had what the Bible called, an issue of blood, which meant that, according to the law, she was not allowed, to be out in public. According to the law, when a person was bleeding, they were unclean. This meant they could not be with other people until the bleeding was stopped and the proper cleaning rituals were enacted. Her bleeding never stopped. Imagine the risk she was taking by going out in public. All she had to do was touch the wrong religious person, and she could be stoned. And who does she set her eyes on? But a prophet. The risk was huge. If Jesus turned out to be like the other religious leaders of her day, she could die just for attempting to touch Jesus. And touch Jesus, she did. But what moved Jesus wasn't that she physically touched him. What moved Jesus was the same thing that moved Jesus when Jarius came to him. What touched him was their faith. The woman is healed, but in the time it took for Jesus to minister to her and to confirm her faith, a little girl dies. I can't even imagine how devastated Jarius must have been when he received the news that his daughter had died, that she died because Jesus stopped to heal a woman who had no business being out in public. But instead of blaming the woman, Jarius did something that touched Jesus even more. In his grief and pain, he still chose to put his faith in Jesus. And in turn, Jesus' touch would raise the dead. And the question everybody asked was becoming much more clearer. Who is this man? Well, that was our nugget for today. Again, thanks for joining us. I'll see you tomorrow.